We're ready to roll whenever.
We are rolling.
Okay.
You say, finally.
No, it's great. This is Stephanie Renee, and another edition of WURD Backstage, and I have the distinct honor of getting a chance to be in conversation with the legendary songwriter, composer, and Philadelphia native, James Mtume.
Thank you so much. I mean, I'm enjoying this way more than you are. Okay?
We've been talking a lot off camera, y'all, so we're
Right.
building rapport,
Right.
as they say. And one of the last things we said kind of leads me into how we can begin our conversation, because I did a documentary film called No Such Thing as Neo Soul. And part of the conversation was with these artists from Philadelphia, like you, who take issue with the idea of anything being neo, because it is something that has been so heavily influenced by people that they admire and love. And so I wonder how you feel about genres in general. You have been able to create so many different styles of music.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me figure
We're
this out too. All right. Okay. So I can do that.
okay.
Okay.
So when
Genres.
Okay, yeah. So, the idea of genres of music, and we were talking about Motown. And so you mentioned the idea of Motown really creating an umbrella for R&B, but there are a lot of people who just consider Motown music to be pop music. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
we sometimes we get caught up in the categories. How has that affected how you express yourself, or has it?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, I think everything requires what I call a frame of reference. Motown was very interesting that you bring Motown up. The reality was, in terms of mainstream music companies, like take Columbia, for example, they only had one black artist. It was a guy named Johnny Mathis. Most of them didn't. Black music at that time was really being run and developed by independent labels.
Yes.
So Clive Davis, once he became president of Columbia, this is very interesting. He commissioned the Harvard Business School to figure out how white companies could get into black music. Excuse me. And their conclusion was, make deals with the producers of black music. They will bring the artists. For example, then he signs a deal with who? Philly International, Gamble and Huff.
Right.
Then he signs a deal with another company called Stax.
Uh-huh.
So they brought the black artists. The brilliance that Gamble and Huff pulled off when they were brought into Sony, well, it was CBS back then, they required an entire black department, black promotion people, a black PR people, and that was never done on that level. So that's how they figured how to get into it. But people create genres for the convenience of conversation. It has nothing to do with a real thing. Like, what's the distinction between black and urban?
Right.
You change the word so you can engage it in a whole other kind of way, And so I've always been human, like neo soul. What's new about soul? And it only seems to apply to black music. I've never heard neo rock,
Right.
neo heavy metal. No, the genre is the genre. They just figure out different ways to market us, and that's all that is, a marketing tool.
Absolutely. Well, with that in mind, let's talk about Philly and the kind of atmosphere that Philadelphia created that helped to create you.
Oh, God. Well, first of all, I'm fortunate enough to be 71. When I was coming up and during my days, growing up in Philly, getting back to your point about genres, there was no thing. There was no difference for me between jazz and R&B and pop and funk. I also had a very unusual childhood. My biological father is Jimmy Heath of the world-renowned Heath brothers, Percy and Tootie. The man that raised me, I don't use the word stepfather. The man that raised me was James Hengates Forman, and he was a great pianist. He played with Dizzy Gillespie when he was 18. So imagine 10-year-old kid growing up. Maybe one Sunday, there's Dizzy Gillespie at the table.
Yeah.
There's Thelonious Monk. There's John Coltrane. I'm 9, 10 years old, sitting in the middle of these conversations. Lalo Schifrin. So I would do that, be around that, and I'd go sneak up maybe to Pep's, the bar, to go hear Yusef Lateef.
Right.
And then that weekend I'd run up to the Uptown to see the Motown Review. it was this thing of oneness. And I really do believe that. Genres are created for the convenience of conversation and marketing.
Yeah.
There's only two kinds of music, good and bad.
Yeah. And we need to have more of that, but we also need to have more intergenerational sharing.
Oh my God.
I say one of the things that has ruined our people's connection to music culture is earbuds. Because when we were crowded around the family stereo, there was an opportunity for grandma and mom and dad and the babies to have an informed conversation about what we liked and didn't like, about what happened to be on the record player at the moment. But you also were exposed to live performance.
Oh,
so
yeah.
that had to have a profound influence on you deciding to do this professionally.
Because I tell people my front ground is jazz. It's not my background.
Right.
And there's so many things about jazz that I was able to translate when I migrated into pop and funk and R&B, and that is having your own signature. I think we talked about that earlier. One of the things I lament today is a lot of what I call cookie cutter. You know, somebody makes a sound, you go to sleep, wake up next day, 20 people, and people get rewarded for sounding like somebody. And it started in jazz. You have young jazz musicians. Oh, he's great. He sounds just like Coltrane. That's a reason for me to hate you. That's Coltrane. That's Miles. Who are you? Finding your own signature is the most important thing. I mean, when we were coming up with my band, if I had walked into a record company with tapes sounding like Earth, Wind & Fire or the Isley Brothers, you'd be laughed out of the place. Now, sameness has become the vibe. I call it, in many cases, the glorification of mediocrity.
Yeah.
You got to raise the bar. Who are you? What is your signature?
And how much of that do you think has been also, before we even get to the point where it's commercially viable and people are trying to pursue a career, there were music programs in our schools that helped to groom a sense of excellence and purpose in the music.
You're right. The first thing that gets cut out of black education is the arts. I've always said art is the highest form of intellect, and intellect is the highest form of art. When you have both of them, that's the best of both worlds. And I'll give you another one. That's a great point you made. Forget the schools. When the last time you walked through a black community and saw an instrument store?
Right.
Where you could buy an instrument. Yeah, think about that. I can walk all through Harlem and not find one, music store.
Yeah.
So that happened too. So I'm not one of the old heads that condemns technology. I invite and I absorb technology, anything new. So when the young brothers and sisters started migrating to the drum machine and sampling, I wasn't against it. I called it the genius of desperation. They figured out how to keep the music going using the DNA of funk and R&B to keep it going. All I ever said was sampling should be a tool in creation, never a substitute for it. Now you start to see young rappers that have bands.
Yeah.
And I think that's very exciting. And the possibilities are unlimited. You also now have a lot of young rap producers who come from jazz. Terrence Martin, who does Kendrick.
And I just saw him touring with Herbie.
Rob Glasper, I mean, it's happening. And I think that mixture, young jazz cats producing hip hop, the world's limit is unlimited.
Yeah.
See, you have, in order to create new music, and this is something that Miles Davis told me, and as you know, that's where people ask me, where'd you go to school? I say, MD University, okay? Same one that Coltrane and everybody else went to. He said, in order to create new music, you must have access to new sounds. And that's what technology brings us. Mm-hmm. Now, if you dig acoustic music, that's your personal preference. But don't say one is better than the other. Mm-hmm. You got to press music has to be pressed forward.
Yes.
And I think, look, 40 years from now, there'll be some young brother, young sister that comes up and says, that's the new music. And we'll all go, wow, okay?
Right.
That's where it's at. You got to be open to change, because if you don't adjust to change, you'll be changed by change. Mm-hmm. So I'd rather adjust to it. And if you looked at my career, I've always I never thought out consciously, okay, I'm going to do this kind of music. But the more open you are, the more you grow.
Mm-hmm. Avenues for that level of expression. let's talk a little bit about we were welcomed into this space with your friend playing selections from your score for Native Son.
Native Son, yes.
Released in the 80s. And so the doorway of understanding you had the ability to score film,
right.
and the discipline of that,
yes,
and adding that to your resume, because you have such a wonderful, diverse resume, which we'll talk a little bit about in brief. But we're we're going to try and touch on some of those things. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, when I was asked to score the film Native Son, during that process, it hit me. I said, you know what? I think I could score, television. You got to think something into existence. So, fast forward a few years, I get a call for this new TV show called New York Undercover. And at that time, the technology was possible. I would score the show in my basement, send it out to LA, every week. New York Undercover. If people ask me what are you most proud of, and more than any record or song I've written, doing that show was most important to me because it wasn't personal, it was cultural.
Yes, it
I
was.
wanted to change the dynamic of music in terms of television. I want to put a black sound on it in a way that I felt it had never been done. And I think I was fortunate enough to been given the opportunity, and I think we accomplished that. I never looked at it as my personal accomplishment. It was an accomplishment.
Let's talk about the timing of that too, because we're talking about a relatively brand new network.
Right.
We're talking about a show that has almost completely a cast of color, a young, trendy young people that were on the cutting edge.
Hip urban New York.
Yeah. Right. And you get a chance to give that an underpinning of solid music that also reflects our cultural identity.
Well, I think we were talking earlier. The thing that other than scoring it, which was a huge opportunity, I was the only black composer on all of television that had a dramatic series. Mm-hmm. They had brothers and sisters doing comedies.
Right.
This was like straight up, okay, you got to know this. You can't fake that funk. And so in the original script, there's a place called Natalie's, which was a club scene. In the original script, that was just written as a place where the cops would go meet. Now, New York Undercover airs season 94-95. Arsenio Hall had just been taken off the air. And then I rethought it. I said, you know what would be interesting? If we use this Natalie's Club to bring in young artists to redo classics, and then bring in classic artists to redo one of their hits. For example, Mary J. does Natural Woman.
Yes.
112 does After the Love Is Gone. B.B. King does Thriller's Gone. Al Green does Love and Happiness. So it was a way of molding it, and then it wasn't like, nothing that had been seen like that. And I had to redo. Those weren't records. I redid all those tracks. Mm-hmm. So that's where my production skills came in.
Yeah.
So I'm scoring the whole thing, and then I'm doing the Natalie's. But it was a lot of work, but it was fundamentally, that's the thing I'm most proud of. Yeah. And I always tell people I'm never into awards. I'm only into rewards. And what I mean by that is my reward is if the music that I'm doing touches somebody and they appreciate it. Yeah. That's the biggest reward you can get.
And so you were telling me a story about the screening of Native Son.
My goodness!
And the fact that one of our beloved scholars and presences that we've been talking a lot about over the past year, James Baldwin, had a comment for you.
It was one. Look, I've had a few extraordinary moments. This has got to be in the top 2 or 3. New York, I'm sorry. Native Son, they premiered it at the Apollo, which was very interesting.
Yeah.
So they introduced Oprah, everybody was there, the stars, and they introduced me to come up on stage as the composer. It's my first film. So after the screening, I went to go to the bathroom. So I'm in the bathroom, there's nobody in there. All of a sudden, the door opens. I look, in walks James Baldwin. Now I'm like, how do you spell nervous? And he looks at me, he said, "Oh, you're the young man that scored this film." I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, man, that was amazing. He said, and then they said, this is the first movie you ever did. I said, yes, sir. And it was like, I had just met, you know, he was my hero as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, my parents used to give me these books when I was a kid. Go Tell It on the Mountain, Giovanni's Room. So I was so familiar with his work and just a fan. And it was extraordinary.
Yes.
You know, I would put that right up there when I ended up having a one-on-one with Duke Ellington. When I was with Miles, the first tour.
He's in my DC bag.
Right. Oh, yeah. So I get to the concert. It was my first tour with Miles in Europe. So for some reason, I got there early. And I'm sitting in there. The dressing room door opens. It's Duke Ellington. Here I am. I'm like 22. It's like, and he walks in, and it's just me and him. And I'm so nervous, you know, because, look, whatever I've done musically or otherwise is nothing compared to how I look at the people that I stand on.
Yeah.
And Duke is right on Mount Rushmore.
Yes, sir.
And so we were talking, and he said something about, he said, I've watched you with Miles. I like what you're doing. He said, I'm going to call you for my next album. I ended up recording with Duke Ellington.
Yeah.
But those kind of moments. You know?
But that's when you know that people really hear you and really feel what you're doing, and they want that energy.
Yes.
To add to the
Yes.
collaboration.
Yes.
So this brings me to one of the things that you're here to celebrate now, which of course is one of our R&B classics in Juicy. Now, I got to tell you that one of the things I love about that song is how subversive it was.
Oh.
I want to talk to you about mainstream airplay, because there are so many people who complain about hip hop and lyrical content or whatever else. And I don't think there's anything wrong with celebrating our physical coming together as adults, as consenting adults, right?
Sensuality.
But now when I look back on it and listen back to that song, I snicker at how clever the lyrics were.
It was clever.
And think people must have really not listened to it closely, because there would have been some kind of uproar. Talk about what made you decide.
There was an uproar.
We'll talk about this.
All right, Juicy Fruit. You know, I had been so fortunate to have worked with so many great artists. You know, Roberta Flack, Donny Hathaway, Close I Get to You, Back Together, Stephanie Mills, Never Knew Love, What You Gonna Do With My Lovin', Put Your Body in It, Phyllis Hyman, You Know How to Love Me, all these wonderful artists. And then one day I sat down to write. I'd always done an Mtume band. There was only like 2 albums before that, but it would be in between 2 or 3 projects. Oh, we got 6 weeks, let's do an Mtume album. This time I sat down and I said, I hated everything I was writing because it sounded like something else I'd done. And I said, wow, okay, this is not right. I pulled off, didn't produce anybody for a year. Went in the studio, rented a particular studio in the other side of town that didn't have all that sophisticated stuff. Because one thing I always know, the studio is the other musician, the sound that you can get out of a room.
Yes.
I always tell people, man, I can make a record in a phone booth. You know, I know how to make it work. So I said, I'm hearing a new sound. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I had to explore it. So the album was finished. Juicy Fruit hadn't been cut. I'm sitting there. Everybody had gone home for the evening, and there was a drum machine over there. Now, nobody was using the drum machine. It was the Lynn. And I told the engineer to hook it up. So I sit there. Doom, taka, doom, cat, doom, taka, cat. I said, ooh, I like that. I called everybody back, gave them their parts. We laid Juicy Fruit down in about an hour and a half.
I believe
My
it.
lead singer,
that energy.
Tawatha Agee, was in Europe. She was on tour with Roxy Music, a big pop group.
Yes.
She's in London. I called her. She said, I got 2 days off. I flew her back. We went in the next night, laid Juicy. While she's doing one verse, I'm writing the next one. We finished it. I said, I think we got something. The one thing I knew, people will like this or they will hate it because it was so different. I mix it, boom, boom, boom. I think this is something. I take it to the record company. Epic. We can't put this out. Juicy Fruit almost never came out. Here's what happened. I argued so heavy, and they were talking about it's 2 things. It's too slow, and the lyric content. I said, well, you know what? I'm in the room with all the executives. I said, none of you MFs buy records, okay? Now, let the people decide.
Yes.
So here's, because I'm raising so much cane, they finally say, okay, we're going to release it for Quiet Storm, after 12 format, not daytime. All right, I'll take it. I'll take what I can get. After 1 week, sister, and this is the honest to God truth, they were getting so many calls from program directors all around the country. They said, are you crazy? They said, you got to release this for regular format. And one of the program directors said, and I heard him, because I sat in the room when they were doing the conference call. He said, let me tell you something. He said, all the years I've been doing this, he said, I've never seen a record where before you hear a verse or a word or a chord, people know it by the beat.
Yes.
Now, here's true talk. When I did the record, the beat wasn't the most important thing to me. I was like, oh, dig these chords. And Tawatha's performance was just flawless. But no, the truth is that beat.
Well, so, we've already talked about sort of.
You can look me everywhere.
No. Listen, what I chuckled about in the shower this morning was Cherry Blossom Kiss.
Oh, yes.
I was like,
yeah.
So this is for everybody who's watching this and who will be listening to this. Go back and now fully listen to the lyrics of that song for the poetry. And I think you will chuckle to yourself and also give Mr. Mtume additional credit and kudos for how all of that came together.
And I want to add something to that. This is a very important point you bring up, and most people wouldn't pick up on that. I've always considered my approach to lyrics and melody. I'm a man, but I write from a female perspective. Juicy Fruit was one of 3 songs that I wanted to write as a man from a female perspective.
Okay.
Juicy Fruit is about sensuality.
Yes.
And that's why Cherry Blossom Kiss, You're My Sugar Thing, My Chocolates. Women think in terms of sensuality. I've always felt more imaginative. The other song was You, Me, and He.
Yes.
Where I took a love triangle and flipped it. A lot of brothers flipped out. You're so used to hearing a song where the brother comes, yo, baby, I was buying some shoes. I saw this woman. I fell in love. I'm out. But for a brother to have to hear, because remember, Tawatha opens the song with, there's something I want to say.
That's right.
Try and understand. There's another in my life. He's my lover, but I'm your wife.
Yeah.
Look, let me tell you what I caught on that. My life was threatened at a concert. The promoters called and said, Mtume, I don't know if you can go on. Somebody just called and said, if you walk on the stage tonight with the band, they're going to shoot you. So that was a tense moment.
Wow.
It's a true fact. I don't even know if I've ever even talked about this on camera. So what I did, I had to face something. I'm sorry, I'm just touching.
No, yeah, it's fine.
But I said, no, we're going to go on. So what I did when we walked on stage, I told them, turn all the lights on. I said, everybody look to your left, look to the person to your right. I didn't say nothing about I had been threatened. I said, get their image in, their face in your head. I said, now turn the lights off and let's funk. Another thing I'm thinking, somebody gonna really trying to shoot you. Would they really call a promoter?
Yeah,
but
people posture.
Another thing happened. There was a bar we would go to because the place called Neil's, and he had great food. And I remember one night I went in after some session, and Neil said, "Man, Tunes, if you were here a half hour early," he said, "I had to call the cops." I said, "What?" He said, "Some guy jumped on his woman right here because she kept playing You, Me, and He." And he said, "You trying to tell me something?" Brothers got a lot. They got really uneasy with that.
The idea of how real art that connects with people, it pushes us emotionally in ways that we don't allow ourselves to go in other spaces.
Right.
That's a testament to the way that your music connects with people. And I wonder, because we talked about this sort of arc where there are no genres,
right?
How you felt the first time you heard Biggie sampling your song?
I was cool because we'd already discussed it. I thought it would be a very interesting experiment. Mm-hmm. Because West Coast rappers have been sampling funk a long time.
Yeah.
East Coast rappers weren't. Biggie was probably the first one to sample a straight up R&B funk record. That was an East Coast rapper, and it propelled us into the next generation. Yeah. I mean, that record. I mean, we've got over 100 samples of Juicy. I particularly like Keisha Cole's version. Mm-hmm. I think Let It Go, but No, there's a lot of. There's a new one came out a couple months ago with Chris Brown and R. Kelly called Juicy Booty. I mean, the saga goes on. But no, man, I'm like, what I am surprised with is that I did a lot of music.
Yes.
But you don't choose how people remember you. So if Juicy is the epitaph, then that's so be it. But I'm just glad that we were able to affect another generation, you know.
Well, you have certainly done that. And there is something to be said for, as we talk about perhaps untold stories and the things that you are passionate about and that you continue to do. Let's talk about some of the political space that you have occupied and why that was a passion and is a passion of yours.
I never made the distinction between politics and art. And I came out of a political background. When I went to school in Pasadena in 1966, it was the beginning of the Black Power movement. And I joined an organization called US Organization and remained politically active in that. You know, US with Ron Karenga created Kwanzaa. And I think about that. I sit back, I was at the second Kwanzaa celebration when it was like 30 of us.
Yeah.
And everybody's saying them niggas crazy. You know? But look what what's 50 years of Kwanzaa.
Yeah.
So I've got all being very close and meeting Imamu Baraka. The reason I came back to the East Coast, because he asked me to come back to work on the Ken Gibson campaign for mayor. First black mayor from Newark on the East Coast. Now, I watch his son, who is mayor.
Yes.
I mean, these things, I can't even script this, but I do want to tell you one more story since you done opened me up. So I told you Juicy almost never hit the airwaves.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you another song almost never came out. They were going to take off the album. Closer I Get to You. Donny Hathaway and Roberta Flack on my mother's grave.
Why?
I'll tell you. This is an exclusive. So Roberta invites me to the listening session at the studio. For the album was called Blue Lights in the Basement, I think. So invited there is Ahmed Erdogan, the president of Atlanta. Now, I'm sitting on the couch. I don't even know if she introduced me. I'm just like a little, this is my first pop song. And he listens to the whole album. And this is the honest to God truth. He tells Roberta, I like everything on here except that Closer I Get to You. He said, I'll never forget these words. He said, it's boring and repetitious. Now, I will go to my grave thanking Roberta. She fought. As a matter of fact, it got so heated, they took it outside in the hall. Because she was into, no, this has got, and she argued to keep it on. Now, here's the capper. He comes back in and said, okay, we'll keep it on. He said, but it'll never be a hit. This is the president. So, you know how much I care about people's opinion.
Right.
But I just gave you two of the biggest ones. The Closer I Get to You. And it's so funny because people think The Closer I Get to You was the first single off that record. It wasn't. You can't tell me. It was a song called the 24th of December. I said, well, that'd be over on the 25th. Okay. So, back then, you drop a single and maybe 6-7 weeks later you drop the album.
Yeah.
So what happened was when they dropped the album, radio went on the Closer.
Yeah.
And they were forced to release that as a single.
Yeah.
That's a true story.
Yeah. Well, see, that helps us wrap up because it brings us back to the necessity for you being able to share these stories and inspire the next generation of creatives that are coming up to find their own voice.
You got to.
And so give us, give us an overarching, this is Papa Mtume now.
Yes.
Reaching down to the younger generation.
No, reaching over. I don't reach down.
Okay.
I reach over.
I love it. Thank you. With some advice about how to assert yourself in this space in a meaningful way.
Two things. Don't even worry about the word no. The only thing that stops you is you. And the last thing I'd like to say for young artists, I want to quote one of my favorite masters of wit, Oscar Wilde. He said, all you can do is be yourself because everybody else is already taken.
That is a great quote. We appreciate you being here at home.
I thank you so much.
And creating this warm vibe for us. Let this not be the last time we get a chance to sit with you.
Anytime you holler, I'll make the trip. This is great.
You heard it here.
This was great. Thank you so much. I hope this worked out.
Yeah.
Perfect. while we're still rolling, I'm curious because you talk about New York Undercover.
Yes, sir.
One of the things you talk about Black music divisions. Jackson and McHenry. Do you have a Jackson McHenry story?
No, who was that?
Didn't they produce New York Undercover? George Jackson and Doug McHenry?
No.
I thought they. Who?
No, it was Dick Wolf, Andre Harrell,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah, the
So-
Uptown Entertainment.
So
Yeah.
you knew Puffy before.
oh yeah, I knew Puffy from the
long
music.
Before
Yeah.
he came.
And
to
I knew Andre Harrell when he had his rap group Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
They-
With the frilly shirt.
Yeah, listen, they are on an album we did called Theater of the Mind. I was using rappers. No R&B cat was doing that. It's a song I wrote called Deep Freeze. You know, it's about how, like one of the lyrics is, the world spins a new syncopation. Vacant minds search for a clue. Stuck in social constipation. The plan divides me and you. You know, you want R&B, but not from me. That's where we at now.
Right.
All the young male R&B singers are white boys.
You want it, but not for me.
Yeah, you want R&B, but not for me.
So well, that goes. Well, you basically talked about it, but what you talked about was the entire lunchtime conversation, basically.
Yes.
With the exception of the one thing in terms of cultural appropriation, you're saying.
Oh, Bruno.
And well, not just Bruno, but. Like,
No, I didn't. Okay, I'm sorry.
He said brutal.
oh, brutal.
Yeah, brutal. Yeah.
Bruno. I
No,
thought
no.
Bruno got into it too.
Yeah.
But I mean, we were saying also like when you're trying to educate people, it's so difficult because the resources don't apply. So it's almost like we need this information more than anybody because we create it.
Yeah.
Like we're doomed to repeat the cycle, but then at the same time, when you say, well, what is this worth? White folks will continue to undervalue and almost discredit the fact that it exists. No, or would you disagree or agree? Like,
No. I'm coming straight with it. You know, I'm only pausing because I want to make sure my words
okay, sorry.
are exactly what you know.
Got it.
I've always felt that was always the plan, to control black music without black people, and to be you know. I have a phrase I say. It's so bad now. We go to the back of our own bus. You know what I mean? We're so conditioned. We time on remote control. White people ain't got to be there no more. Remote control. And the cultural continuity of the information has been so shattered, you know, and music was the vehicle where this expression came. We talked about it earlier.
Yes.
I mean, older people talking about, oh, hip hop ain't nothing. And then the young people saying, man, you can't attack my music. Your stuff ain't nothing. So I have this phrase I say, if you have all age with no youth, your glass is half full. All youth with no age, your glass is half empty. Right now, we got a half a glass of music and culture.
Yeah.
Because if we don't exchange the information, and when I say exchange, like I was saying, I don't reach down to young people. I reach over to them.
Yeah.
Because they know stuff I don't know. I know stuff they don't know. Together, if we come and do that, we got it all. But right now, it's so fragmented, you know?
Well, it's like what's happening in the government, especially what happened to that plan? Did you just shake that plan off?
Now, it's been leaning like that.
Was it like that?
Yeah.
I just noticed.
Man, you're a man with a camera. You're supposed to see that.
I was so tuned into your conversation. What jewels? But you know, so the dilemma I was talking about was like, I got a call. The video label was like, hey, we're interested in re-releasing this movie, this black movie. We know you have an interview with this person. Can we use it? So I called my friend who's done commentaries, and I'm like, well, what's the deal on that? Like, you know, like they're acting broke, but I know they're gonna sell it somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, somebody gonna make some money off of it. So, you know, on one level, it's like I don't care because I'd rather the person that pays for it have access to the information.
Yeah, right.
How the movie's made, but at the same time, there's no black-owned distribution company for DVDs. So it's almost like you're being undervalued for your information, and you know, it's like a ever-evolving wheel. I hear the same stories from 30 years ago. I mean,
Yeah.
So is that part of the plan? I suppose.
It's all part of the plan. The plan is. I'm only saying what I feel. In some ways, I remember I had a very wonderful conversation with Harry Belafonte.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay. If y'all don't know who he is, then y'all can turn this off now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
And Harry said something to me that was so deep. He said, Mtume, sometimes I fear we missed the boat. And I'm listening to who's saying this to me. But when I look, I can't never go there that far, but I'm not Harry Belafonte. I'm not 90 and have lived through everything. But in many ways, integration was one of the most horrible things that happened to us. Because when it was segregation, you were forced to have your own.
Yep.
You know, and I use this analogy. It's like, okay, there's a hamburger store. I'm not selling the niggas. What do? We pick it. I'm gonna make you take my $5. Jew looks over there, sees some space across the street. I'm gonna buy and set up my own hamburger. Okay, boom. We go to a hotel. Y'all can't stay here. We pick it. I'm gonna make you take my $200 a night. Jewish guy looks across the street. I'm gonna build a bigger and better hotel. So as a result, we have no ownership.
Yep.
And now it's endemic. And with black music, this one I can attest to. I saw this with black music departments. When the major labels started bringing in, like I said, like the Philly Internationals and the staff, they learned how to get into the business of black music. They didn't have black promotion people. We showed them how to do it. And then they iced us out. Mm-hmm.
So just so you feel, so you understand.
Are you back in this now?
No. because
Go ahead.
Because this is the conversation that Mike and I had at lunch about we have to think of the gift that we've been given to create on a parallel track, but a separate track from how we are doing our wealth building, consciously wealth building, so that we are able to invest in our own creativity and then create a platform to bring other people along. It's got to go hand in hand. It can't be one or the other for everybody.
No, capitalism has an amazing ability to absorb anything that comes close to it, to absorb it.
Yes.
Okay? You think about segregation and you think about you had to have your own hotels. You had to have your own cleaners. Look, the most successful person in the black community was who? The mortician. He never ran out of clients.
Right.
Okay? Because white people wouldn't bury black people. So now what has happened? You know, do you know a lot of the black mortician companies are now bought up by white ones? You have black hair products. Then it comes Revlon.
Yep.
You know, and I can't argue with it. And look at radio. When I grew up, there was black radio. Let's go up until the 1996.
And Michael Powell.
And what was it? The Telecommunications Act.
Yes.
That Clinton signed. Then I can't get mad at somebody who bought a station for $400,000, now sells it for $18 million. But what he didn't know, or she didn't know, that once they bought it, they was gonna flip it. Now that same station would be worth $150 million.
Right.
I saw Motown, the head of Motown, Barry Gordy, when he made his deal, I think he sold the publishing for like $60 million. That same venture capital company that bought it flipped it for $300 million. See, we can't think that far ahead. You know, they print the money. You know, I've seen Live Nation completely wipe out black promoters.
Yeah.
But how do you argue? You know, black promoters. That's the way every black act was broke. I mean, around the country, you have 4 or 5 majors. And when you know what happens when white people see this is the kind of money that's generating.
Yes.
Then they get in the game, and they come with more money. You can't argue with Prince, A Purple Rain, because they came and said, "Yo, here," you know. But the reality is, once we let go of that, we can't build nothing. There's no more black promoters.
Yeah.
There's no more black. Look, you have black program stations that program black music. They ain't owned by black people no more.
Right. Right.
That's just the reality. And I'm gonna give you one. Since I'm on this, we had a meeting. This is about now, I guess about 8 years ago. Don King, myself, Al Sharpton, and 3 other people flew down to San Antonio to meet with the head of Clear Channel, who at that time owned 1,400 stations.
Yes.
The FCC said they had to sell 123 stations to minorities. This is a true story. We go down there. Don King flips out a $3 billion letter of credit from Wall Street. How many stations can we get? Now, at that time, regular stations were going for like FM was like about 150. I know we're going to walk out with something. We don't want a mortgage. We want to pay for it. What we were going to start is a FM talk show network. Because that's when I was doing the open line, the political talk show in New York.
Yeah.
We walked out there with not one station. Because when they realized, no, they ain't talking about just dancing. We wanted to start a real, I mean, you got Kathy Hughes, and which is great and everything. I'm very happy for her. But ours is going to be totally dedicated to that on the FM platform. We were trying to get 10 stations at least. Nothing. So it showed me, even when you got the money now.
Right. Because you're still in a position of asking.
You got to ask.
You got a deal and have them agree to the deal.
Yeah. And then you watch, you just watch this. And look, and let's not even talk about the movie industry and Hollywood and films. I mean, to me, it's even worse. Now, I first got into exposure with the film world. One day I was sitting at the house, and my good friend Nelson George called me. Mm-hmm. He said, Toombs, he says, this young brother in Brooklyn's got a movie, man. And they're getting ready to take it, the production house, because he hasn't been able to raise the money to get it out of post-production. He says, a cat named Spike Lee. He said, would you come over and watch? Okay, the movie was She's Gotta Have It. Mm-hmm. I'm over at Spike's house in his basement. He had one of the, I don't know what you call it. It was whatever y'all used back then. It was a
Steamback movie.
Yeah. And I'm watching it. So what happened was, Spike was raising money. So I said, my contribution, I said, what do you need? Boom. I said, I don't want no interest. When you able to place it, boom. And he did that. I wasn't the only one. It was a few people. And he actually gave us credit at the end of the movie. If you watch it. Why he's thanking us is because, we helped him, with the bread. But I saw how the movie thing is just real crazy. Because you're talking about so much more money and how they can ice us so deeply, man. Mm-hmm. You know that way better than me, brother.
I was going to say, right now you are echoing our entire lunch conversation. So I appreciate the fact that we now have a collective buy-in to the realities, to how some things have gotten done, and we've been able to progress to a certain point. But the reality of what you're talking about raising the capital and moving the capital is a deep situation, because we have abdicated so much of our ability to control our messaging by not being able to get something from start to finish and letting the world in as our audience.
Because we've lost such a huge grip on the controlling of our assets. When I say assets, I mean like your music, your films. Look, you look at. I remember when I was talking to Melvin Van Peebles when he had Sweetback, and he was telling me how he was going around out the back of his car to go show this thing. Another guy. This is gonna sound weird. I have appreciation in places that most people wouldn't think I would, like Dolomite. Okay, this dude, whatever you want to say, he did it on his own and he controlled it till he found a place where he would distribute it. But he was making these movies, on the streets.
I understand. I have love in my heart for Petey Wheatstraw.
Oh, okay. So I'm just like,
it's one of my guilty pleasures, y'all.
It's like things that we kind of look down on in a way, because we think we've gotten so sophisticated. But there's a basic mom and pop way of doing things, and you can still maintain more control. It doesn't always have to be up here.
Yeah.
But we've lost the ability to formulate a platform to expose our music and our films. And so we have to end up begging, and begging ain't a cool place to do. It's like the difference between renting and owning your house. You renting, you can be put out at any time. Mm-hmm. You own it, you got more to say.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So preacher. Yeah, you happy? Yeah,
Wait. We tied into something y'all was discussing.
No, I was just laughing at him saying that you are definitely preaching to the choir with us.
You basically hit every single. Because we didn't come and say, like, she was already prepared.
Right.
But I was like, I've been going through a lot of crap the last few months, because I'm like, okay, this Black Panther and this Ring of Time, it represents a cultural shift. Hey,
You're fine. This is just
We
bonus.
just
This
done.
is bonus beats.
I gotta thank you so much for letting me use the space. We're finished.